in this arena, the surprise has been, at least for me, was the way the iPhone apps took off. And you know, in a way, they're just Mac OS apps, but they're tuned for the iPhone. And I was surprised how many little, you know, just trivial things like the level or the currency calculator, which is data fed, but so it's a useful thing. You know, in the old days, you would just go to the web page and keep as a bookmark and get the same thing, but it looks better as an app. And then these things like the New York Times or Bloomberg news apps are surprisingly better, at least for some people may not be surprised, but I was surprised how much better they are than their web version, and that, which makes you think, what's wrong with the web version? And so I am very interested in this next round. You know, iPhone in the United States still only has, there's only 5 million or so iPhones in the US. So it's a big market in terms of the smartphone market, but it's not a big market. And yet it has captured an enormous amount of attention because there's this kind of, the level of people who have iPhones or who are Mac people is higher than the regular population. So it's worth for the app developers. It's worth it for them to look at an iPhone. How long this goes on, I don't know. The current, I mean, I'm very curious in the Palm Pre announcement, which is, I mean, it's not the release, it's starting June 6th in the US. They've had 2 years of iPhone to learn how to compete with it. I think this would be very good for Apple to have somebody like Palm coming on really strong. And there's some big differences. Apple iPhone apps have to be written in C#, and you have to be a developer really to know how to do it. The Pre is working. The apps on the Pre are just HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So a web developer, not a software developer, can write any app for the Pre and the Android. So the Google phone. So that is creating some actual theoretical competition for Apple. I mean, it's taken a while for this to happen, but it's going to be serious. The open source community versus Apple. That's basically what it comes down to. And the other thing of, you know, the iPhone app doesn't play outside that arena, which makes me think that this next Apple product is going to, you know, it's going to be for the iPhone app, the netbook or whatever it's going to be. The big Newton. And I think one of Apple's challenges in this environment is to really rethink the delivery of text. The iPhone, for example, only has a few fonts. It has more than most phones, but it's not enough. And what about font downloading on the iPhone? You know, all that. You're right. What about Flash on the iPhone? You know, I'm not a big Flash, you know, proponent, but if the advertising is coming in Flash, I want it. So I think that that's really just a question of RAM, no? There's not enough room in that little package yet. Maybe the next one. Apple's not done, and so I don't think that you know, if they're content providers working within Safari or working on the phone want Flash in there, and there's a revenue reason for it, Apple will provide for that. They're not idiots. You know, people have a funny idea about Apple as a, you know, very single-minded, you know, kind of almost a theoretically based Steve Jobs construct. And Jobs is not, he doesn't think that way. That's like trying to put a conventional corporate definition on Apple. And it's not that kind of company. Anytime that Jobs learns, or the company at the root level or the management level learns something, they try to build that into what they're doing. So that's why they're so successful. It's not because they're so brilliant. They actually are able to learn. and from the outside it looks like, oh, they're just sitting up there like on a big mountain decreeing this is what we're going to do. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for Microsoft either. They had to learn. So I think you'll see the Palm Pre, Android, and then of course all the other phone companies, Nokia, Sony Ericsson, Motorola, will have either new OSs or new whole packages. And then the Koreans have already jumped in, not that convincingly, but they will. They will provide big challenges for Apple, and I suspect that Apple will be able to turn it around and compete. When Gates stepped away from running Microsoft, it helped. Gates is enormously. I remember back in the '80s, they were equivalent people. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs would go to, like Esther Dyson's, who was here at this conference, would go to her conference, PC Forum, and sit on the same panels and be rivals. And then Gates far surpassed Apple, and then Jobs got kicked out, and it was the end of Jobs. But it turned out not to be the case. I think that getting the kind of founder character out of the picture allows everybody else to push a little harder, and sometimes it turns more conventional. I think Adobe struggled with this. Adobe is much bigger than it was when Warnock was in charge, but at the same time, it's much more ordinary business. It listens to the customers, and it's developing products in a much more cooperative way internally. Is it as cool as it was when Warnock and Geschke were running it? I don't know, but it's certainly not as accessible for somebody like me. Once you have a contact with Apple, either as a major customer or as a developer, it can be really rewarding experience, and that was definitely true in the old Adobe too. But I'm a little worried about the kind of what do you call it? It's a form of morale, a certain esprit de corps that Jobs puts in, and sometimes it's done by fear. One of the former vice presidents said to me that he was the only executive vice president whose hair did not turn white. So it can't be that easy working there. But at the same time, they have a forward motion that is astonishing. And that's all Jobs. With him out of the way, I think there could be some improvements in Apple, but if I were a shareholder, I'd be very worried. That wouldn't be good. So we hope for the best.